I need a hose reel. So I found a one that I liked online. I'll leave a link to his website too and his channel so that you can check him out. First thing I'm going to do is just measure and cut my wood to length. I'm using cedar fence pickets here. These are great for projects that are going to reside outside and get wet because cedar is rot resistant. So after I've got all my wood cut to length, I'm going to, since these are fence pickets, it has that nice shape on the top. And I'm going to use this as a template to cut my second one. And this is two little tiny pieces, so I'm going to go ahead and use a hand saw to cut these. I'm not going to bother plugging in a miter saw and going through all that nonsense just to make these two little tiny cuts. I want to make sure that these are nice and flush, right? And I'm just going to clamp them to my work table. Okay, that's pretty sturdy. When you're cutting with a hand saw, you want to make sure that you're cutting in the same plane, you're parallel to the plane that you're cutting, and your arm is moving in that same plane. That's going to give you a nice straight cut. This is a Japanese saw, so it cuts on the pull. So I'm going to just put this in here, get a little groove started, and then pull back nice and easy. And then come back. And there you go. And I'll sand that off and fix it up later. And then I'll do the other side. So I got these pieces cut. This is my second piece here to look just like the first piece, which I used as a template. They're not perfect, but I'm going to take my sander and round them off anyways, so not a big deal. In a future video, I'm going to make some wooden teeth. I'm going to bring them to my dentist and have him install them. And that way I save money on dental bills. All I have to do is grab my sander and sand them down every 6 months. Save you a lot of money on dental bills. You can still floss, I guess, but just be careful, you might get a splinter. Now I'm making the holder for the nozzle. I'm just using the paint can to trace out the shape and then my jigsaw to cut it out. I'll be right back. I'm gonna go watch some paint dry. I used a trim router to round over the edges just for a little added touch. Next, I measure out my pilot holes that I'm going to drill in the back piece up 3.5 inches and 6.5 inches on each edge. And these pilot holes are going to be to attach the side pieces of my hose reel. And hopefully they'll help prevent the wood from splitting or cracking, because that'd be a real bummer if I did all this and then it just cracked. I've got these all set up to drill my holes. They're going to go through here, here, and here. This is the front of the piece, and I've got it clamped, and I put a board here, just a piece of scrap wood, to help me line them up and keep them square. That is square. I checked it with a square. It doesn't look it from this angle. And I put a little piece of scrap wood up here so that the clamp wouldn't dig into the front of my piece. I'm going to use these Craig pocket hole screws. These are for softwood, and the screws are threaded differently, which helps to prevent cracking and splitting in the wood. So we'll see how these work out. So I didn't end up using the pocket hole screws. They just weren't biting into the board enough to give me a solid attachment. So I used regular wood screws, but unfortunately This did crack a little bit, as I had earlier feared. But the good news is it didn't crack enough to ruin the project. It's still functional. It will still work as a good hose reel. And I know exactly what I need to do should I decide to make another one in the future to correct that problem. And I'll talk a little bit about that at the end. I attached the nozzle holder to the front with a couple of L brackets and a small threaded rod with some wing nuts. Here I'm just measuring them out, and now I'm cutting the threaded rod, leaving about a 1/2 inch overhang on each side, and I just use my multi-tool for that with a metal blade on it. This whole rod gets really hot, so if you do find yourself in a situation where you're cutting a threaded rod, don't touch it for a little while. Make sure it gets cool. After I cut my threaded rod, I used my angle grinder just to smooth out the burrs on either end so that I wouldn't cut myself when I'm trying to water my plants. Then I drilled a hole through my nozzle holder, put the threaded rod through it, and then tightened the wing nuts on either side, and it really held up nicely. I'm happy with the way that turned out. Once I got that all attached, I used a can of spray lacquer to give it a little added protection from the moisture. That was going to be the last step before hanging it, but I decided I'd get cute and put a little racing stripe on it. So I'm just taping it out there. That's Mod Podge that I'm putting on it. It's a sealer. It gives you a nice crisp line. You can get that at Michael's, and don't worry, you're still a real man if you shop at Michael's. And then I had some old paint sample laying around, so I just put that on there, and we'll see how that looks. This is one of my cats, Bridget, and I just love her. She's such a sweetheart, and she loves me. And that's the great thing about pets, is you're their favorite person in the whole world. And if it weren't for her, I wouldn't be anybody's favorite person in the whole world. So she loves birds. What I learned most from this project is the sides of the piece that I made. I would use a slightly thicker wood. Those cedar fence pickets are slightly bigger than 5/8, I believe, 20-30 seconds. So 16-30 seconds is a 1/2 inch. I don't know. I don't feel like doing the math right now, but I believe they're right around 5/8 inches thick, and I think that was just a little bit too thin to screw the back pieces into to have a nice surface for the screw to grab onto. Last thing I had to do was just attach it to the house, and that's it. Thanks.